Check, check, 1, 2. I hope everyone's having a fantastic weekend. It's Sunday, July 20th. We're going to talk a lot of boxing, and I'm pretty much giving you a pretty raw reaction to the action. I was going to do my typical post-fight, breakdown, a more prepared, okay, let me get my thoughts together on this fight. Right now, I just want to kind of give it to you as I've processed it, now that we've watched a pretty stacked fight weekend. And I'm going to start with the biggest fights, obviously, that took place. We had the battle for undisputed at heavyweight where Alexander Usyk knocked Daniel Dubois out in the rematch in the 5th round. We also had Manny Pacquiao's return. And I'll just say Manny Pacquiao exceeded the hell out of my expectations. That man fought to a 12-round draw with current belt holder Mario Barrios. Yeah, 46-year-old Manny Pacquiao, fresh off or not so fresh, but look, he didn't look like a 46-year-old in that fight. 4-year layoff, and he fought Mario Barrios to a draw. I'm really still trying to wrap my head around that. Yes, Manny Pacquiao did visibly fatigue in the last few rounds, and to be quite frank, I had Barrios winning the fight 115-113. I had Manny Pacquiao pretty much dropping, I think, the last 4 rounds. I'd have to go back. In fact, I did, kind of plot out round by round how I scored that one. So we're gonna go over that one. But needless to say, Manny Pacquiao exceeded my expectations. I did not think that he was gonna look that good. I didn't know that he was going to be able to get that left hand off in the middle and late rounds. And Mario Barrios, for at least the first half of the fight, for much of it, I didn't know what the hell he was doing. I mean, he had some success with the right-handed counters to Pacquiao's body. I thought that his work to the body was really giving Manny Pacquiao some issues, but I'm just surprised that Manny Pacquiao was able to keep his feet under him, able to keep balanced, able to throw his punches. And yes, he did kind of go over his front foot a little too much, and he was a little head over skis, but Barrios didn't make him pay for it the way that I think many thought that Pacquiao would. And Pacquiao wasn't just a sitting duck on the outside having trouble getting his shots off because he's 46 years old off of a 4-year layoff. No, he was able to shoot that left hand, and he was able to put those little 4 to 6 punch combinations together, sometimes just 2 punch combinations. I like how it's a hallmark of his game, throwing the left and then the right on top of the left. He was able to do a lot of Manny Pacquiao-like things. I don't think he packs the punch that he used to. And again, I think he visibly tired in the last few rounds. And then we had Sebastian Fundora stopping Tszyu in the rematch. Tszyu wasn't able to answer the bell for the 8th round. I was surprised to see that, but he was taking a beating throughout that fight, got dropped in the first. And, I did think that he was coming on strong. Well, coming on strong is a little bit strong, but he was having some success with that right hand, and even with that lunging left hook. He was catching Fundora with some shots, but Fundora's volume and his accuracy and his voluminous pressure just gave Tszyu no reprieve. And Tszyu throughout that fight was just always getting hit with something. Sometimes a little tap, sometimes something with a little bit more oomph into it. But Tszyu was not having a good time in there, and I really wonder if he ever recovered from getting hurt in that first round, because he was in dire straits. I was actually a little bit surprised that he was able to fight for as long as he did. But given that he was looking like he was willing to withstand the punishment going through the rounds, yes, the end of the 7th was nasty, where you saw for Sebastian Fundora just launching uppercuts with the same hand, uppercut, round ends. Tszyu's kind of hanging over the ropes, just kind of like looking out like, damn, this is a tough job. And then he sits back down and they stop the fight. He wanted no more after that. And I really don't blame him. That was a beating. And boy, Sebastian Fundora, we've seen him. Remember back in the day, seeing him on undercard, seeing him really show out, he looked just a little bit freakish at the time, but I'm sure many like myself are wondering, well, what happens when he really steps up in competition? Well, then over the years, you started seeing him beat better fighters. He stopped Erickson Lubin, and then in the last couple of fights, stopped Tszyu in the rematch, beat him in the first with the controversy in the cut and, that being a bloodbath. But Sebastian Fundora with this last performance, granted, we don't know how much Tszyu had left after those back-to-back losses, especially after getting obliterated by Bakram Murtazaliev. But that performance from Sebastian Fundora was pretty damn good, and it's got me really wanting to see what he can do against Virgil Ortiz. You know, fill in the blank with your favorite 154 pounder that you want to see, you know, go at it with Fundora. You know, I see the sweet science, the young Xander Zayas coming up, and I'm thinking he's a nice boxer. I just don't see him in there with Sebastian Fundora and doing well. David Iser's in the house. Thank you for coming through. Stan Tucker, what's up, Dad? Thanks for coming through. Benji Tucker, what's up, man? Heck yeah. Tim was battling. Yeah, David Iser, Joey Gonzalez did get robbed. Yeah, I really want to go into a lot of these fights, including Gary Russell Jr.'s return. I want to talk about that. He fought Castaneda, and I don't know if y'all already saw the fight, but Gary Russell Jr. showed flashes of Gary Russell Jr., but he's also now at 135. I question how viable he's going to be at lightweight, being that he wasn't a big featherweight. And so now he's in his at least his mid-30s. I wouldn't be surprised if he's closer to 37, 38 now. Let me check on that really quickly. But he still was able to catch his opponent super clearly with those fast punches. Gary Russell for a long time was my favorite, you know, one of my favorite fighters, just because of his blistering hand speed. It was just remarkable. He's 37 now. Yeah, 37-year-old Gary Russell Jr. at lightweight. I just don't see him doing well against any of the top 10, top 8-ish guys. But yeah, he did stop Hugo Castaneda in the final seconds of the 10th and final round. But you saw him get backed up. You saw him get beaten to the body a lot. You saw his reaction to getting beaten to the body. And we're not dealing with prime Gary Russell Jr. His cardio, he had big lulls in certain spots where it had me wondering if he was okay. Like, damn, is he really starting to succumb to the pressure and starting to, kind of wilt to the pressure and those body shots? And he was just kind of putting up the high guard, getting hit like, a lateral to the belly. We'll see how he looks in his next fight. And, if this is any like indication of Gary Russell Jr.'s recent history, he probably won't be back in the ring until next year or the year after. So I don't have any real confidence that we're going to see him again anytime soon. I know he's saying that he wants to get back in there, but it just hasn't been his MO. I can't even think of the last time he fought twice in 1 year. So I'm not expecting to see him, but it was good to see him. It was good to see him. I thought that he was hella retired. I really did. But yeah, let's take it back to the top. I want to take it back to the Alexander Usyk versus Daniel Dubois 2. Give me your thoughts, first of all, in the comments, guys. Let me see what you guys are saying. Yeah, Pacheco. Oh, you put over 1,000 on David Iser put over 1,000 on Pacheco stopping Macumbi. Whew. And you probably saw within like the first 3 or 4 rounds that, yeah, it's not panning out because Macumbi wasn't sustained engagement over the course of that fight. Macumbi was kind of hanging on the outside. He did get that cut on the forehead, but he wasn't looking to attack with sustained pressure and hard punches in the way that he was against Caleb Plant. This wasn't quite the same Macumbi. I don't know if it's because he respected Pacheco more, but this just was not a super combustible fight, especially in the first half. So it became evident to me in the first few rounds, like, yeah, I think that Pacheco's going to just kind of, out-sweet science the guy and run away with a wide decision win, which is exactly what happened. But like, there's certain fighters that don't afford you the opportunity to make it a distance fight. Some guys are good when you engage them and they're dangerous when you engage them. But if you are looking to survive, a lot of fighters will let you get away with that. Not that they're trying to let you get away with it, but they don't have the game to cut the ring off and to just create a nowhere to run, nowhere to hide scenario. Virgil Ortiz doesn't appear to let you get away. McKinson was a sweet science boxer. Israel Madrimov was moving away from him, but Virgil Ortiz just kept on, he didn't stop Madrimov, but you see his way of sustained pursuit. I don't see that out of Diego Pacheco. I do still rate him very highly, but he's not that guy who just suffocates you with his pressure and with his sustained attack. Let's see. Yeah, Benji, Tim was battling David Eister. Didn't he quit? Yeah, at the end of the day, I know a lot of people don't like that word, but I can't think of a more applicable word. There was good reason to quit. I was wondering how he was feeling inside after those repeated uppercuts. Y'all saw that, right? At the end of the 7th round, where it was like in the corner. Tszyu was having some success in that round, but towards the end of the round, you saw Fundora just go, ha, 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 with the same hand. It seemed like 7, 8 times. It might have just been 3 or 4, but it seemed like 7 to 10 times. But he seemed like he landed with each of those. And I was wondering, like, is Tszyu nearly out on his feet? I wouldn't have been surprised if he like fell forward from those uppercuts. But then like after the round stopped, you saw Tszyu just look spent with his arms over the ropes. And I'm thinking like, does he even want this to go on? And then sure enough, in that in between rounds, again, I was surprised that he said no mas essentially, but he had good reason to. The beating that he was enduring wasn't lessening over the course of round. Like you see some guys get really beaten up and hurt like in the first few rounds, but then the fight takes on a more simmering pace. And then you see maybe the guy will make it out of this. But knowing Sebastian Fundora, knowing that he doesn't take his foot off the gas, knowing that he'll throw 70, 80 plus punches per round. I like to see the punch stats, but knowing how he just empties out, that wasn't going to get better in the 8th, 9th, 10th and beyond. So I ain't mad at him. I wonder, and we're going to get back to this because I'm going to go to Usyk Dubois too, but I do wonder what Tszyu has left going forward, because his whole MO is warrior, is, you know, late replacement. Fundora, sure, he was going to fight Keith Thurman. Keith Thurman pulls out the week of the fight. Hey, you want to fight Fundora? Hell yeah, let's do it. You want to talk about like a change in your matchup? You got 5'7" Keith Thurman coming up from 147 basically, and then you've got the towering Inferno at 6'5", nonstop punches, and Tszyu was all game. And even after he lost that bloodbath of a fight with the elbow, he takes on Bakram Murtazaliev and then gets obliterated, and then he has one tune-up fight against Joey Spencer, and then is back in the ring with Sebastian Fundora. And again, he got hurt in the first round, ends up quitting after the 7th. I'm just wondering, like, maybe he could build himself back up. He's over 30. Now, he's not like mid-30s, but he's 30 plus now. I wonder what kind of an appetite for destruction and an appetite for receiving damage he has after this Fundora fight, after this rematch, because that was rough. It was tough to watch. And again, every round he was having some of his own success. He was hitting Fundora hard. Fundora was taking his punch extremely well, extremely well. Tszyu wasn't taking a lot of Fundora's firepower as well. But granted, like there would be like 3-4 Fundora punches for every one Tszyu punch, at least in terms of meaningful punches. So yeah, I wonder where Tszyu goes from here. That was a beating. Alexander Usyk versus Daniel Dubois too. This is one of those where it's just humbling, right? Because I did a preview video. I'm like, I'm picking Usyk to win via decision. This one's not going to look like the first fight. This is a different Daniel Dubois, right? He's coming in super confident. He's got a ton of momentum. He just stopped Jarrell Miller, Philip Ergovich, Anthony Joshua. He's back in the ring, and he thinks that he could take this guy out now. It shows you what the hell me or anybody else who's talking about this stuff knows. Like, he got outclassed and he got smoked in there. And my dad and I and Benji and I we were talking about this, and it looked like Usyk knew all of the punch patterns that were coming his way before they came. So you see like a 4-punch exchange where both guys let go of 2 power punches. Usyk has just enough head movement. First of all, I mean, he's either going like this or he's at least kind of leaning. Now he's a lefty, so he's kind of like leaning just off to the side. So when Dubois launches a right hand, Usyk is just like inches out of range, either too far out for that punch to land cleanly, or off to the side just a little too much where the punch sails by, or he pulls back just enough so the punch goes here. There were so many hard punches that Daniel Dubois threw in those violent, combustible exchanges that Usyk was he was missing Usyk by this much, and then Usyk's left and then right hook were just nailing Daniel Dubois. And he showed a good chin for a couple rounds, but it seemed evident to me pretty early in this one that he was actually feeling those punches, that this was no pitter pat, that this was no, rabbit, the middleweight, as Tyson Fury would call Usyk, running around and just pop, pop, pop. This wasn't that. Like, Usyk was throwing these punches with some real authority. And again, you could see the body language of Daniel Dubois change over time. Yes, he did still try to pursue. Yes, he was still throwing hard punches. But I'm watching Dubois and I'm thinking, like, he's starting to throw that right hand like he doesn't expect it to land. Like, he's just starting to, in baseball, he's starting to just try to hit for contact. Just make some contact. Put the ball in play. You know what I mean? Once Daniel Dubois got there, I felt like Usyk became more emboldened and started sitting on his punches more. It was an incredible performance. Like, to me, this might be like a top 3-ish Usyk career performance. Now, I know he's beaten Fury twice, so I wouldn't argue with anybody saying that they would elevate both of those wins over this 5th round knockout of Dubois. But I'm just saying, like, if you wanted to give somebody like a Usyk 101 on what makes Usyk so fantastic, show them him versus Dubois 2, where he's being outweighed by 20 pounds. And, Daniel Dubois is this. And by the way, Usyk did weigh in heavier than I expected him to. Like, he's like a 230-ish guy now. So anybody who was thinking he's like a 215, 220 still, no, he was a solid 230, I think. But again, there wasn't a more dangerous time to fight Daniel Dubois. If Daniel Dubois was ever going to beat Usyk, this was the time. This was the time. And again, it took Usyk about 2-3 rounds to visibly outclass him. And then it took him another couple rounds to knock him out pretty viciously. Like, he was hitting Daniel Dubois so hard with those shots, and he couldn't land any more flush than he was landing. It's almost like the fight was in slow motion to him. And, you start watching the combinations and watching the exchanges. You're looking at the punches coming Usyk's way, and it's like you could tell by the first and second punch of the exchange, oh shoot, Usyk's about to nail him with the 4th punch. Like, I felt like the patterns started to develop, where you started seeing like the art in real time and kind of seeing it for what it is. My dad said, because I was watching it with him and family, my brother, my mom, and just we were all watching it. And my dad said, when Daniel Dubois threw a hard right hand and then Usyk countered with the left, he said that it looked like Usyk, he had his probing hand out there. And he said it looked like there was almost like a magnetic force, or like a string, that started pulling Dubois' glove out towards Usyk, so that Usyk could kind of recoil and then explode with his counter. Almost like he was like a magician somehow summoning Daniel Dubois' right hand to come out as he expected it to, as he almost commanded it to, so that he could launch the counter. Now, I didn't see the same thing that he saw, but I got what he was saying. Like, there's something about, and I was saying this in the preview, Daniel Dubois can't become a passenger, can't become a witness, a spectator to the Alexander Usyk magic show. He had to make Usyk react to him. But even that comes with the risk. It comes with the cost. But it was a cost that Daniel Dubois' past couple performances told you that he was willing to bear. He was willing to bear that cost. But as those rounds against Usyk started to unfold, you're like, I think Daniel Dubois like senses that he's about to get destroyed here. Usyk is not a nice guy in the ring. He's a hell of a nice guy outside of the ring, seemingly, right? But inside of the ring, he had bad intentions. And I don't know if it was the chatter about that borderline low blow that was ruled a low blow that got to Usyk and kind of got under his skin a little bit, where he wanted to just demonstrate for anybody who had any questions about anything, this is what I do, right? And then he has this kind of performance against, again, Daniel Dubois at the height of his powers, at the height of his scariness, confidence, momentum. And he did that to him. 5th round knockout. This one didn't get into the second half of the fight. That's why I say I think that this might have been a top 3 performance from Alexander Usyk. Let me get to some of what you guys are saying. David Eisler said Gary Russell looked awesome. We're gonna get into that one again, but I thought he looked really good, and he looked faster than I expected him to look. And again, he was landing super cleanly, but against Hugo Castaneda, but he did have pockets of like kind of looking like he was wilting. And Benji said that his head movement was excellent. I'm not sure if you're referring to Gary Russell Jr. or Alexander Usyk, but yeah, head movement was excellent, and I guess you could say both Gary Russell and Usyk were effective on the inside and outside. Ken Cunningham, thank you for coming through. Charles Stinger, thank you for joining us. Ken says the one thing nobody's talking about with Usyk is he always has more energy than his opponents. Always. Is it God-given or is it PEDs? Look, anytime I see somebody who's like blowing my mind and just capturing the imagination, right? I do privately, wonder to myself like, and Usyk's no exception. I wondered the same against, prime Pacquiao. I've wondered the same against a lot of people. I usually don't come out, since I've had a channel, I don't come out and say it. There were a couple times that I wanted to, like when Galal Yafai got beat down, and I haven't spoken on this one yet, but he got beat down, the undefeated Galal Yafai a couple weekends ago, right? His opponent was juicing, and I was watching the fight wondering, is this guy juicing? Because of how tenacious that energy was and how aggressive and violent and electric those punches were for every round, and just nonstop throwing those fast, hard, electric punches. I'm like, this doesn't even look normal. Like, I feel sorry for Galal Yafai is what I was thinking. But Usyk at 38, look, I'm going to err on the side of Usyk is just super dedicated to the craft, that he has all the right, habits. First of all, he's got, this is a this is an Olympic gold medalist who's undefeated as a cruiserweight undisputed champion and as a heavyweight undisputed champion. With that, he's demonstrating so much skill, right? If it was a thing where Usyk does have a good chin. He's been hit by AJ Fury. He's been hit by Derek Chisora. He's been hit by hard punchers. He has a good chin. Maris Breedis. But he's demonstrating so much skill that I'm looking at as a class differential. Now, the energy, I don't know what he's doing to be able to fight these younger fighters, and for him to be the one who could turn it up in the second half of the fight, because that's his MO. We didn't even get there with this fight against Dubois, but he, against Fury both times, against AJ both times, he's the one taking command in the second half of the fight as the big guy. Well, maybe that's a little bit of it too, that these guys are 250 plus pounds, and throwing punches for, several minutes every round. I don't know how Usyk is able to turn it up in the second half of these fights, but it's been a theme throughout his career. He did it against Maris Breedis. He did it against Murat Gassiev. He did it against Derek Chisora. He's been doing this. He did it against Michael Hunter, who was having first half of the fight success against Usyk. I don't know what it is. I don't know what it is. But I'm impressed by it. And again, it's been a thing with him. So it's not like at a certain point of his career, he started developing this ability to fight hard and fast in the second half of the fight. This isn't like a new thing. If it was like a period of his career where he wasn't showing that he could do it so much in other phases of his career and then was able to do it, I would be more suspicious. But this has always been a thing with him. And he fought Breedis and Gassiev like years ago fought Michael Hunter even before that. That's still, by the way, Michael Hunter's only loss, competitive fight. But yeah, I would err on the side of no. I would say that nothing would surprise me with any fighter. I just want to put that out there. Nothing would surprise me with any fighter. But I will err on the side of no, or at least give the great Alexander Usyk the benefit of the doubt, in my personal opinion. Where does he stand among the GOATs? I know that that's just like an ongoing conversation, but I don't think you can have a short list of all-time heavyweights without putting him in it. And I know that he hasn't spent as much time. And yes, if he would have had 30 fights at heavyweight, I feel like I'm sure he would have lost one. I don't know that, and I can't say that because he's fought for a long time. He doesn't have a ton of fights. You know, he's one of those guys who turned pro a little bit late because of his extensive amateur career, like a lot of Eastern Europeans do. I just don't see how you could keep him out. Because here's the thing. People were starting to have those conversations about Tyson Fury. Anthony Joshua was like the most, you could say the most important box office wise, right? Star power wise, the most important heavyweight in the post Klitschko era. And Usyk just came and destroyed both of their hopes and dreams and visions of themselves. Usyk did that. And when Usyk was at cruiserweight moving to heavyweight, it was only a few that were really taking him as a threat to the crown, saying that, yeah, Usyk can and probably will beat Anthony Joshua and Tyson Fury. It sounded very far-fetched. And I want everybody to remember that, because sometimes as time goes on and our expectations adjust they adjust based on the realities of what we just seen. So 5 years from now, when we think Anthony Joshua, Alexander Usyk, we're like, of course, Usyk. But going into that first fight, AJ was the favorite, at least a 3-1 favorite against Usyk. So Usyk, it's easy for us to say now, like, oh yeah, he's a sweet scientist. Of course, he's going to beat the Tyson Furies and the AJs and stop Dubois twice. Damn. But we didn't see this coming. This was supposed to be either in the post-Klitschko era, this was either supposed to be the Deontay Wilder or Anthony Joshua era. Then it was like, oh, I guess it turns out it's the Tyson Fury era. Well, no. Actually, this whole thing is Alexander Usyk's era, right? Because he did that, and yeah, you could say Tyson Fury was a little over the hill. You know, he had just had, we saw what happened with him and Francis Ngannou. That changed a lot of people's ideas of where Fury was. So I'm going to acknowledge that's not totally insignificant. And Anthony Joshua had been stopped by, Andy Ruiz. And after those two Usyk fights, gets stopped down the line against Daniel Dubois, a vulnerable fighter to say the least. But again, if he was so vulnerable, we wouldn't have viewed him as a big favorite over Usyk. And if you did see him as a big underdog against Usyk, that would have been your chance to make some real money, because you would have had knowledge or an understanding that the rest of the even experts didn't have. So I want to give Usyk a ton of credit, by what he's done in these 8 fights at heavyweight. 8 fights at heavyweight, because 6 of those 8s were wins over champions, beating AJ twice, beating Fury twice, stopping Dubois twice. That's pretty damn unbelievable. Now, matchups wise, you could have your arguments. Would a Joe Frazier give Usyk problems? Would Usyk have problems with a late 80s, not 90s, late 80s Mike Tyson? There are a lot of matchups. Like I've always said, I thought that even when AJ was at his best, that Evander Holyfield would always give him hell, because we know Evander Holyfield can absorb hundreds of punches in a fight. He did it twice against Riddick Bowe. I know he fought Bowe 3 times, but those first 2 fights against Bowe, and we saw Holyfield go the distance with Lennox Lewis twice. We saw Holyfield beat Mike Tyson, fight him twice. We saw Holyfield in there with 12 rounds, with George Foreman, old Foreman, but got hit by Foreman. And so we know Holyfield ain't going nowhere. Can you assume the same about Anthony Joshua? So if a fight breaks out where Holyfield looks like He's just down for like 12 rounds of chaos and hard hitting and absorbing punches. Is Anthony Joshua down for all that? I never saw that. So I'm thinking maybe AJ beats this guy or that guy or that guy, you know, in the boxing timeline of heavyweight history. But this guy, Evander Holyfield, at any time gives AJ hell. That's just how I see that. But with Usyk, Joe Frazier and Richard Dwyer was the first one I saw pointing this one out. But Joe Frazier's bob and weave style, him staying low and just coming at you. The fact that Derek Chisora had some success against Usyk, granted, that was Usyk new to heavyweight. That needs to be considered. But Derek Chisora did give him problems. Does that indicate that a Joe Frazier, an all-timer, would give Usyk even more problems with a similar style, but a lot better? Something to consider. I don't know how Usyk does against 60s, not 70s, but 60s Muhammad Ali, Cassius Clay. The guy who was light on his feet and stopping people in the middle of the ring and making punches miss by inches throughout the fight. I don't know how Usyk, I'd love to see it. I don't know how Usyk does against Lennox Lewis. I think that that's an interesting matchup, but we know that Usyk deserves these conversations and these hypotheticals now because he is in that club, whatever club you want to have. And whether that club has 10 members, 5 members, I think Usyk belongs in it. I think he belongs in it. The only thing against him is that he didn't spend his career at heavyweight. That's how I see that. So Benji, you were talking about Usyk with the head movement and all that inside and outside. Thank you. Benji said the power is crazy as he gets older. Yeah, but Usyk is getting bigger. So whereas when he first came to heavyweight, he was a 215 guy. He looked a little bloated in his first heavyweight fight. If you look at the weigh-in and the press conference, you see Usyk with his shirt off, and he actually looks like he's out of shape a little when he's standing next to Chaz Witherspoon, his opponent, his first heavyweight opponent. I was thinking when I saw that fight, like, I don't know if heavyweight's going to work out for Usyk because he looked like he was, again, putting on like the wrong kind of size. And he eventually stopped Chaz Witherspoon, but it was over, like a few rounds. And Chaz Witherspoon was really bringing nothing really to the table to cause Usyk any distress. The Derek Chisora fight, he won the fight by decision, but I saw the pressure that he was under. And I'm like, I still don't think Usyk beats like the top dogs at heavyweight. He doesn't beat AJ. And I remember after Usyk knocked out Tony Bellew in his final cruiserweight fight, I was watching that with my dad and we're discussing, okay, so Usyk's probably going to move to heavyweight next. Do you think he beats, the Wilders and AJs? Because those were the guys at the time. And both me and my dad agreed, like, probably not. We're talking about a 250 pounder in AJ with bludgeoning knockout power. Usyk does get hit here and there. He's a great, sweet scientist, but he's going to be a 215, 220 guy, and he's giving up a couple inches. He's giving up the size. He's like, probably not. And again, a few years later, here we are. So again, I want to give all the credit to Alexander Usyk. Amazing. And I do think that it's historically fitting. I don't talk a ton of politics, if any, on this channel, but when you think about what's going on in the world, you think about Russia, Ukraine, and the war, the invasion, and all of that, it seems so appropriate. Almost like it's a divine act that the baddest man in the planet, a source of hope, inspiration, and all that, happens to be Ukrainian right now. Right now. I think that's important historically. And I don't know how it worked out that way. But it's just so coincidental. But it's so, there's just a poetic justice in that. I'm still trying to think of really how to articulate that, but that is it's the thing that those movies are made of. It's a lot. It's a lot to digest, and it's really inspirational because every time he steps into the ring, and I've wanted to point this out, but I didn't really know how I wanted to say it. And I'm going to continue to say this in a lot of videos going forward. People talk about, boxers should be fighting the best. Boxers. What other job do we ask the person to risk their career every time they do their job? Think about that. We have an idea of a boxer, of a fighter, MMA or boxer. Then they step into the ring or cage. If they get knocked out, Edgar Berlanga, whomever, the whole community, the fans, the networks, the promoters often turn their back on the fighter and nothing is the same. Their earning potential, boop, just went down the chute, just like that. I get from a fan standpoint, I want to see all the best fight the best. I want to see them take these risks. But in what other job? This isn't like the NFL or like the NBA where you lose a game in the NBA, you got another 81 games. You lose a game in baseball, you got another 100 games. You lose a football game, you could get injured terribly in any of these sports, but you lose a football game, you've got another half a dozen before the season's over. Boxing, combat sports is the only sport, and quite frankly, the only job. I mean, police officers and different ones, they really put their lives on the line in a lot of these instances, firefighters. But think about what other job you're really asking the employee, the worker, to put their whole career on the line every single time they do their job. So yeah, it's easy for us fans to say, hey, fight Boots Ennis, fight Virgil Ortiz. It's like, what? Fight, Daniel Dubois twice, Fury twice, with all the pressure. I'm sure Usyk has to feel the pressure of kind of having the country on his back symbolically every time he enters the ring, because if he gets knocked out in this rematch against Dubois, let's keep it real. All of these GOAT conversations that we're having over Usyk, those change. Because look, Fury's GOAT conversations changed after he lost once to Usyk, let alone twice. All of these things change in one fight. And I think that we need to be real respectful of that. Usyk entered that ring yesterday. If he gets knocked out, it's like, well, I guess so much for those GOAT conversations. Not for everybody, but most people would kind of be like, let's cool it, because yeah, he got smoked by Daniel Dubois. Yeah, he was older. Yeah, he was 37, 38, whatever. But he got smoked by Daniel Dubois in that rematch. Let's not forget, I think it was Andre Ward or somebody who said, if Roy Jones would have retired after that first fight against Antonio Tarver, where he won a tough decision. We weren't used to seeing Roy Jones in tough. This is before he ever got knocked out. He won the title against John Ruiz, returns to light heavyweight, fights Tarver, but by the late rounds, Roy Jones is looking withered. He's looking on the ropes. He's looking in distress. It's like, I'm not used to seeing Roy like this, but he wins that decision. If he would have retired there, he is in all of those pound for pound GOAT conversations, but now he's not. That's boxing. That's boxing. And so, yeah, for Usyk to enter that ring, for Floyd Mayweather to enter that ring every time in their career and perform the way that they performed, for Usyk to perform how he performed twice against Fury, twice against AJ, twice against Dubois, that is some next level stuff, because there isn't another occupation that I could think of, especially in the sports world, where the fans and the public are asking the athlete to risk it all, risk their whole career every single time they do their job. Let's see. Ken Cunningham. Oh, thank you. He said, great analysis. You will be a great professional commentator. Thank you. Thank you. I'm really just doing the best that I can every time I do this. And I really enjoy these live chats too. I like the previews. I like the post fights, but it's honestly when I could get your feedback in real time and kind of see what you guys are saying about an upcoming fight or a fight that we just saw. And that really makes me, tick on the boxing side. But Benji, so you mentioned Usyk's power getting crazy as he gets older. Do you attribute that to his weight? Or do you attribute that to him choosing to sit down on his punches more? Maybe doing a different type of strength and conditioning. Maybe doing something where he's placing more emphasis on the power in the shots that he is confident in landing? Or do you attribute it to something else and more nefarious, more against legitimacy? Benji also said, or Charles Stinger said, outside of Usyk, I love what I saw from Fundora. Yeah, we're going to get into that one next. Well, actually, we're going to talk a little bit about Pacquiao and then get into Fundora. Fundora Zoo 2. Wow. But Benji said Ukraine has dominated the heavyweight division for the majority of the 2000s. Yeah, between the Klitschko's and Usyk, it has been their era. Which is interesting because it's not a huge country. That is a country that punches way above its weight class. Like, you know, there's some countries that people might think of as being smaller countries. The Philippines. The Philippines is a huge country. And if you look at the population, if you look at the highest populations of countries around the world, I think Philippines is top 10 in overall population. Like Pakistan surprised me. It was top 10 in overall population. But you know, the UK punches above its weight class in terms of boxing. But Ukraine, certainly. Puerto Rico punches above its weight class. Cuba punches above its weight class. Though I have to look at the Cuba whole population, but it does. Let's see. Antonio Maiz, thank you for coming through. Lee Van, thank you for coming through. Antonio Maiz said, Usyk is an all-time great fighter at this point. You just can't bet against him. Yeah. You know, I was thinking about betting against him, but then I was like, there's just something about Usyk where he knows, some people know how to win. Usyk knows how to win. I just didn't see him obliterating and doing that to Daniel Dubois. Like, he punched Daniel Dubois like he was punching a heavy bag. Like the way that he was setting those exchanges up, and then Dubois throws a hard right, follows it up with a hard hook. It barely misses, grazes Usyk, and you see the Usyk punches that are coming in return because they were exchanging bullets at the same time, and every time they did it, it was a little bit breathtaking. I'm sitting there like holding on to the seat like, ooh, what's about to... But then you see Usyk, how cleanly he was landing with Dubois, and then you just realize like, nah, there are levels to this. And like right now, it looks like you're watching a fight break out on like a high school campus, and there's one guy who might not be as big as the other guy, but one guy knows how to fight, and the other guy is just in there throwing punches. You know, that's what it started to look like. Lee Van said, Usyk said 38 is only the beginning. Yeah, that's like one of the first things he said in that post fight. So I guess he will stick around for a while. A part of me does kind of want to see him retire. I don't know. You know, I think I wanted to see him retire because I'm a little bit scared of what might happen to him if he keeps on doing it. You know, I do like to see the chapter closed, and for somebody to actually say, I did that and I walked away with a perfect record. There are a few, Marciano, Floyd Mayweather, I was going to say Ike Ibuchi, which he did, but look up his history. He ended up going to prison for multiple decades, I think. But I mean, the guy beat David Tua and Chris Bird. You know, the guy was about to be a mad force in the division. And I think that whole, you know, the era that people say that there weren't a lot of good heavyweights, the Samuel Peter, Hasim Rahman, John Ruiz, you know, that era, Chris Bird. There would have been another guy named Ike Ibuchi if he didn't go to prison for multiple decades. And again, he beat David Tua, but he's still undefeated. I was saying all that to say he's still undefeated. But yeah, Mayweather, Andre Ward, Alexander Usyk as it stands. I wouldn't be mad at him retiring right now. It's like, because honestly, outside of a Jake Paul fight, what else is worth Usyk's time right now? Another title defense? Like Joseph Parker? Ajit Kabayel, like these are the next up in the division. Moses Atama, Lee Van, speaking of which, just said, I wonder if he will fight Atama. So Atama's about to fight Dillian White, which is interesting. I'm like, damn, go ahead, Dillian White. I didn't think that you would want to. I would think that Dillian White would want a AJ rematch, a fight against a name. Not a fight against the young killer who's coming up and taking scalps. Not that guy. So props to Dillian White for taking that fight. He wouldn't have, Moses Atama wouldn't have been in the top 10 guys that I thought that Dillian White would want to fight. I would be more inclined to think that Deontay Wilder versus Dillian White at this point would go down than Moses Atama versus Dillian White. Are you crazy? Like, are you crazy? And you know, Atama is not tested against the better heavyweight. So, you know, maybe he is ready, maybe he ain't ready. But props to Dillian White for, effing around and being willing to find out, you know? Benji Tucker said, I don't know about PEDs, but I've never not been shocked with the ways Usyk has won. Yeah, Usyk is he's mind blowing. Like I was saying it in the preview, like you could argue that one of the most shocking moments of the past few years of boxing was either 8th or 9th round. I think it was the 8th where Usyk had Fury, the one where he dropped Fury and he had Fury stumbling all over the ring from rope to rope. And then he gets hit again, boom, with a clean left. And like you just hear the commentators losing their mind. Wilder says done. Is that Wilder? That can't be Wilder. Wilder says done. Hey, y'all see? Hold up, I'm tripping right now. That'd be wild if that was Wilder. But yeah, that would be funny. Well, thanks for joining us. But yeah, Wilder in the chat says done. We got it. Wilder versus Dillian White. But Usyk and Fury, when they fought that first time, that moment in that round, I think was the most shocking, breathtaking, exciting moment. I mean, we've seen knockouts, obviously, where somebody gets knocked out cold and they're flat on the back. We saw it with, AJ Ngannou, right? We saw it with, we've seen it a few times. And I mean, obviously moments like Daniel Dubois steamrolling AJ, you could think of a lot of shocking moments throughout, Brian Mendoza knocking out Sebastian Fundora, but because of the magnitude, because of the weight, because it was the battle for undisputed, the long awaited battle for undisputed, finally, we're going to settle it. This is it. And then that moment where Usyk, who looked like he was like in dire straits against Fury, looked like it was not going well for him, looked like he was like, okay, he gave it a shot, but these middle rounds are really belonging to Fury, and I don't see how Usyk's going to turn this one around. And then he has a little success in like the 7th round, more success earlier in the next round. I think then he bloodies him up, but then he has the moment where he's got Fury out on his feet, basically. And it took Fury like 10 to 15 seconds before he hit the canvas because he's like, oh, the Gypsy King, the huge dude is just running across the ring, bouncing all the way into the ropes. He could have been called for a knockdown like 3 times because the ropes must have caught him 3 times, that they finally call it a knockdown. But I will never forget where I was, what I felt when I saw that moment, who I was with, all that. But yeah, Usyk never ceases to amaze me, and it's only getting more amazing as he's going into now his late 30s. It's really weird. Alex Alberto G, thank you for coming through. He said Usyk is number 2 pound for pound unless Crawford loses to Canelo. Crawford has been number 1 since 2017. I wouldn't argue too much with that, but there is something to be said about Usyk's fighting 2 times a year too. So it's like, Crawford's last 3 wins, if I'm not mistaken, and tell me if I am mistaken, but his last 3 wins are against Madrimov, and then before that, Errol Spence Jr., and then before that, Sean Porter. Sean Porter's been retired for ever since that fight, but that fight feels like it was a long time ago. Oh no, it was the David Avanesian when he knocked out Avanesian. I think that was between Porter and the Spence fight. But all that to say, Crawford has been a 1 fight a year guy for a while. Granted, he's amazing performances, but Usyk has been fighting 2 times a year more than he's been fighting 1 time a year. Equally amazing performances against Fury, AJ, Daniel Dubois. So to the degree that you rate Usyk's opponents is going to determine whether you've got him at number 1 or number 2. That's how I see that. Benji Tucker says skip too many leg days. Who is that? Alex Alberto G said 1 straight hand to the top of the head is all it takes. Yeah, you talk about Wilder or just in general. Oh, Alex Alberto G. Okay, said, oh, maybe the Wilder done is in reference to Alex Alberto G's comments about Usyk fighting Wilder and not so much Dillian White versus Wilder. But let's see. Usyk needs to fight Wilder, but y'all don't want to entertain that. Wilder, most disrespected heavyweight of all time. I think that there's some truth to that. The problem with Wilder's resume, and apologies, I mean, to Wilder if that is Wilder in the chat, but what I look at is, and it's not Wilder's fault, but it was the promotional politics that disallowed him to get the fights against Joseph Parker, Dillian White, Derek Chisora. He tried to fight Alexander Povetkin. He flew out to fight Alexander Povetkin, but Povetkin tested positive for PEDs. That's not Wilder's fault, and that would have been a very, very significant win. Alexander Povetkin remains one of Anthony Joshua's best wins, but that would have checked a box for Deontay Wilder, you know, because the only one that he's got that is of that ilk, of that top 5-ish heavyweight ilk, was Luis Ortiz twice. But not enough of those mid-tier, Andy Ruiz, you know what I mean? Those guys, not enough of those wins to really, in my view, substantiate an actual Hall of Fame claim. There are arguments for it and against it. The argument for it is obviously a 5-year heavyweight champ with like 8 to 10 title defenses. The arguments against it are, but when you look at the quality of opponents and you look at who he beat in that top 10 out of the Andy Ruiz's, Joseph Parker's, Dillian White's, Alexander Povetkin's, and so forth. Again, Povetkin, he tried to fight Povetkin, but any of those, and then obviously Tyson Fury and Anthony Joshua, doesn't have wins against any of them except for Luis Ortiz. That's the argument against it. And you could argue that one of his best accomplishments on paper was fighting to a draw against Tyson Fury. He did fight a couple weeks ago, Lee Van. Why don't we talk about Manny Pacquiao? Maverick says Lennox Lewis is the second best heavyweight boxer ever. I wouldn't argue with that. He did get leaned twice, avenged them both. The Oliver McCall one was kind of weird, obviously. And yes, Edworth Espinosa, thank you for coming through. Usyk did lap the division. Biggest threat for him is Aji Kabayel. And I do think Joseph Parker is an interesting matchup too. But yeah, Aji Kabayel has been exceeding my expectations every time he gets in the ring. But it's going to be interesting to see where Usyk decides to go next. Again, I wouldn't be mad at him retiring right now. It feels like it wouldn't be a terrible decision. It would be kind of fitting. So Maverick 77 Defender said Dubois quit again. Are you saying that he quit after he hit the canvas, or he mentally quit at some point before he started hitting the canvas? But yeah, Wilder beats Ngannou, should beat Ngannou. But Manny Pacquiao versus Mario Barrios. The return of Pacquiao at 46 years old after a 4-year layoff. He exceeded my expectations. I thought that he was going to lose by decision. I thought he was going to have enough experience and craft to get out of it. I thought that it was going to get a little bit sad at a point. And I wouldn't have been surprised if they stopped the fight with Pacquiao on his stool between rounds. What we got was something totally different. Manny Pacquiao was competitive against a belt holder. At 46 years old, 4 years removed from his last professional fight, Manny Pacquiao was getting that left hand off. He was touching Barrios with the left hand. At first, I was wondering how his balance was going to work out, because it looked like his feet weren't totally together in those first couple rounds. But I don't know. I saw him getting his punches off, landing on Barrios. I thought Pacquiao won the first round. I did think he lost the second and third round, but he started looking really good in the middle rounds, to where this is how I had it. Pacquiao win in the first round, Barrios win in the second and third, so it's 2-1 Barrios. Pacquiao win in the fourth, so it's 2-2. Barrios win in the fifth. Pacquiao win in the 6th, 7th, and 8th, though the 6th was really close. So at that point, Pacquiao's won 5 rounds, Barrios has won 3 after 8. And then I had Barrios winning the last 4 rounds, although I had the 9th round as close. So I had it Barrios winning 115 to 113. I could see a draw. I can't see how you could give Pacquiao the win. I didn't see 7 rounds that you could give Pacquiao. I saw maybe 7 rounds that you could give Barrios, but I'm not mad at the draw. And, if Barrios had to do better, that's the thing. This was Barrios' chance to show like, hey, I am a real guy. Like, he let Pacquiao fight a draw with him. And maybe Pacquiao is more competitive than any of us thought. Maybe Pacquiao would do well against other top-ish welterweights in a bad era for welterweights. But I was surprised that going into the middle rounds that Pacquiao still had as much energy as he had. I thought that by then he would be standing on the outside, looking for his entries, trying to move his head, getting caught by way more jabs. Like, where was that jab? That's the thing. Barrios wasn't able to control. He was able to hit Pacquiao with some jabs, was not able to control Pacquiao with the jab. I thought Barrios' best punch really was a counter right hand to the body, almost like a similar counter right hand to the body that, Dubois hit Usyk with, even in the rematch, or Tyson Fury was hitting Usyk with, counter right hand to the body. Barrios was landing that against Pacquiao, and Pacquiao was complaining like hell about those body shots. Pick him up, pick him up, pick him up. How many times in that fight was Pacquiao telling Barrios, not the ref, but Barrios, pick him up, pick him up, like how many times? How did Barrios not just fully commit to destroying Pacquiao's body? Now, I think the answer to that is because Barrios started getting not hurt, but stung by some of those Pacquiao left hands. But I was just blown away that Pacquiao was still able to. Now, he's nowhere near prime Pacquiao. Prime Pacquiao mows the lawn with Mario Barrios. Seriously. Like, I don't think there's anybody who would disagree with that. But this 46-year-old version of Pacquiao looked a little better, or maybe this was just a better matchup for Pacquiao. I think that part's true. But he looked better than he did against Ugas, I thought. I did not think that he would look better than he did against Ugas. I thought that by the 5th and 6th round, it was going to be clear that, let's just get through this, Pacquiao. Let's just get through this. But no, I was on the edge of my seat. I'm like looking at my dad. I'm like, is that another round for Pacquiao? Did you give Pacquiao that round? What about, and then I'm like, and then it started last few rounds. It's like, that's another Barrios round, right? That's another Barrios round. Yeah. So I had it 115, 113, but this was a very competitive fight. And I'm proud of Manny Pacquiao. Damn, that was an amazing performance to fight to a draw. It's almost a fitting ending to the Rocky movie. Like, he comes back, he returns, doesn't get his hand raised, isn't the 46-year-old champion, but competes to a draw. There is I know Pacquiao probably doesn't feel this right now, but there is a moral win to that because I think that he exceeded people's expectations. Let's see. Barrios, yeah, he did show Pacquiao too much respect. Now, in the late rounds, I thought that he started getting on his front foot more and started like applying the pressure to Pacquiao, being a little bit more disrespectful, not like in a non-boxing way, but disrespectful in an aggressive way, but still not to the extent that I thought that he was going to take over the fight. I thought that he was going to put a beating on Pacquiao. I saw Pacquiao getting tired in the late rounds. I didn't see Pacquiao getting hurt in the late rounds. And it's like, damn, Barrios, like you couldn't, no, like draw, really? Like Barrios can't be too happy about that either. The only thing that Barrios might be happy about is the fact that they might run it back. Another huge payday for Barrios. Benji Tucker said Jinky knew that Barrios wasn't dangerous. Yeah, and it was kind of cold for Pacquiao to admit that, right? You would think that would like really light a fire under Barrios. And, I feel like Barrios' trainer, Bob Santos, knew the assignment. I'm still not sure Barrios knew the assignment. Or maybe it was just an assignment that was a lot easier said than done. A lot easier to plan it than to apply it. And again, Barrios was getting hit by, look, if you can't get out of the way of Pacquiao when he takes that step and he throws that right hand and then that little swivel right hand on top of it, right? He goes like, huh. And then he throws the one that dropped Thurman, right? Thurman got hit by the left, but then it was the right on top of that Pacquiao loves to throw, that dropped Thurman. Pacquiao blazes people with that stuff. And he was able to do that to some degree with some success to Mario Barrios in the middle rounds too. even every now and then in the late rounds, but not nearly as much as in the middle rounds. So yeah, hats off to Manny Pacquiao, fought to a draw. I know that it's kind of anticlimactic, but I'm not mad at the decision one bit. I don't even feel disappointed in it. For me, it was, is Pacquiao going to look like a pro grade boxer against a top fighter? That was my question. And he did. Let's see. Now my screen changed. I hope I'm still on. Yeah, we're still good. We're still good. Let me get to some of what you guys are saying. Charles Stinger said, I really don't understand why Barrios would land combinations flush, back Pacquiao up, and then not keep... Exactly. Because remember back in the day, Pacquiao would get backed up. He doesn't throw counters at so much as he's getting backed up. He lets the guy let his hands go, lets himself get backed up, and then he taps himself on the head or on the chest or taps the gloves together and says, like, let's go. And then he does his thing. He's not somebody who's going to like how Marquez countered Pacquiao, put him flat out. Pacquiao doesn't do it like that. Now, he's so fast that it might look like he's throwing a counter, but when Barrios was backing Pacquiao up, it's like, oh, I think he got him with that body shot. Pacquiao didn't like that. Why do you then get back onto your back foot and wait for Pacquiao to start running the show again? Yeah, you're right. Barrios did that too much. Benji Tucker said, PBC has used Barrios several times to prop up one of their big name fighters. I feel like they give them belts so they can greet a match with one of their protected fighters to take. So they could, create a match with one of the, Barrios is not too dissimilar from Raleigh Romero in that regard, right? Raleigh has done better though. Especially with this Ryan Garcia win, but they do the same thing with Mario Barrios. Got him a belt fighting Ishmael Barroso. So now they got another belt in the PBC sphere in their circulation. Sector MMA, Spence made, thank you for coming through. Spence made the right choice, not fighting Fundora. He sure did. Yeah. Alex Alberto G. And I wouldn't be mad if Spence never returns to the ring. Just my opinion. Alex Alberto G. Floyd is 48 years old. Floyd could come out of the couch right now and collect all the belts and become undisputed. He beats Barrios, Norman, Haney, and Patty Donovan. I don't think so. I would love to think so, but seeing Floyd in these I know they're exhibitions. I don't think that Floyd could do that at 48. I wonder if he's tempted to come back, seeing Pacquiao come back. I wonder if that makes Floyd want to come back. But it's like, nah, just protect your 50-0, man. Why come back? But if he did come back, I don't think he could do that. I don't think that he can right now at 48. But, you would think that, Floyd beat Manny, right? And Floyd's older than Manny. You would think that Floyd's style ages better than the athletic Manny Pacquiao, who has to rely on being a freak athlete with superhuman hand speed, foot speed, energy. You would think that style should erode more quickly than Floyd's style. But yeah, I just don't, for some reason, maybe I'm wrong, but I don't see Floyd at 48 being able to do that, beat any of those guys. Maybe Patty Donovan, maybe. But every time I think that somebody loses to Barrios disappoints me again. Barrios should have beaten Keith Thurman. How about that? At that point, I'm like, okay, Barrios is not that guy. He's the opponent, but he found a way. He beat Ugas and he's got a belt. Benji Tucker says, staying on the same card but different fight. I've tried and I just cannot become a fan of Brandon Figueroa's style. It was interesting when it was looking a little Navarrete-ish. He's like Navarrete light. There's a class of guys who could overwhelm you with their pressure and their volume, and they put you on the proverbial treadmill from hell. I like to say that a lot, but I thought Brandon Figueroa was kind of in that club because, look, that club consists of who? Navarrete, William Zepeda, to an extent, David Benavidez, more so at 168, Sebastian Fundora. There are certain guys that just give you no reprieve, no room to run, room to breathe. Brandon Figueroa did that to a degree. When you see him in some of those fights where he's just breaking the guy down and the guy just kind of collapses like, just get me out of here. Figueroa did some of that. But Joet Gonzalez is a solid kind of like, he's a B minus at everything except for defense. He doesn't have good B minus defense. but he's a solid fighter. Fought close fights with Isaac Dogboe and other pretty good fighters. But you know, the announcer said it best as soon as they read the scorecard. Like, Joet Gonzalez cannot catch a break. I thought he beat Figueroa. I felt bad for Joet Gonzalez. Like, he's taken so many close L's. You know, he's the guy who Shakur Stevenson beat to get a hold of the 126-pound title. So Shakur became a champion for the first time in his career, beating Joet Gonzalez for a vacant title at featherweight. And that was Joet Gonzalez's first loss against Shakur Stevenson. Yeah, let's get into Sebastian Fundora versus Tim Tszyu 2. Oh, man. I was pulling for Tim Tszyu here. Yeah, you're right. The lack of defense made Figueroa versus Joet Gonzalez tough to score. It was a bloodbath, headbutts, cuts, just a lot of ruggedness. We see some fights like that. And it's hard to call those fight of the year because you see a little lesser skill in some of those fights. You just see a ton of heart and will. Tim Tszyu. I was pulling for Tim Tszyu. I really was. I enjoyed seeing his rise. I remember setting the clock every time he would fight in Australia, beating Jeff Horn, Dennis Hogan, and just being like, okay, well, what happens when Tim Tszyu starts fighting better competition? He eventually does, beats Terrell Goucher, stops Erickson Lubin. That was Fundora who stopped Erickson Lubin. Stops Tony Harrison, I meant. Stops Carlos Ocampo in the first round. Beats up and beats Brian Mendoza via decision after Mendoza knocks out Jason Rosario and knocks out Sebastian Fundora. Brian Mendoza then loses to Tim Tszyu and then loses to Sergey Bohachuk. But Tim Tszyu, that decision to go on in that third round after the cut, really after the second round, but after I can see why they would let it go into the third round with the first fight against Fundora. Because it's a bloodbath, but it's like, let's see what he could do. But then seeing how much he got backed up and seeing how he got hit and seeing how rugged that third round became and seeing that now Tim Tszyu can't really see, I feel like they're going to regret the decision not to stop that fight when they could have stopped the fight. Tim Tszyu would have still been champion. He wouldn't have endured 9 more rounds of Sebastian Fundora in that first fight. Probably wouldn't have fought Bakram Murtazaliev for that belt after that. And then the rematch against Fundora, like they would have rematched. He would have rematched Fundora, but he would have rematched Fundora without fighting the whole 12 rounds in that first Fundora fight. And he wouldn't have gotten knocked out against Murtazaliev before their second fight. It just feels like that was the first domino to fall that ruined, because I kind of feel like it's ruined Tim Tszyu's career. Now, he did have defensive flaws, and I think that maybe personally that's what I underestimated, before he fought Murtazaliev, and, I was more aware of those flaws going into this rematch against Fundora, and I did pick Fundora to stop Tim Tszyu. I did pick him to stop Tim Tszyu. And I guess the fight wasn't too dissimilar from what I thought. I didn't think Tim Tszyu would get dropped so early, though. He got dropped in the first round. And I don't know if he ever recovered from that first round. He took a beating, and it's like, I think his chin is done. He didn't get dropped with every shot that he got hit by Fundora with. He took some of those shots, many of those shots, pretty well. But there's just no way that you could exit that fight and be ready to go anytime soon against who should he fight next? Where does Tim Tszyu go from here? He quit on his stool. A guy who prides himself on being a warrior was forced to quit on his stool and acknowledged in the post-fight in the ring that that's the baddest man at 154. Can you work your mind up after that acknowledgement, after that quit, after losing these 3 fights, and convince yourself and perform as if you are the best fighter in the world, best fighter in the division? It's just been a rough go for Tim Tszyu. And Sebastian Fundora, I'm looking at some of these clips and stuff, and I watched the whole fight. Tim's how is it possible that 6'5" and he's not in his early 20s anymore. He's like in his later 20s now, is still able to make 154. Not only make 154, but if you look at what they weighed in at, he was like 152 point something or like 153.2. It's not like he had to gut himself to barely make 153.9, 154.0. He looked like he pretty easily made it in his late 20s. So one question, how much longer can Sebastian Fundora stay at 154? Because I would love to see him fight Virgil Ortiz. I would love to see him fight, Israel Madrimov. I would love to see him fight any one of these, 154-pound studs right now in what, arguably the hottest division and best division in boxing. But let me see something real quick. Who do we have at 154? I know we've got Bohachuk, and I know we've got Jesus Ramos, who's about to, Murtazaliev is about to fight Erickson Lubin. It's not official, but it looks like that's the fight that they're looking to make. I would love to see how Lubin does against Murtazaliev. But yeah, we've got Virgil Ortiz. I don't think Terrence Crawford's coming back to 154. I don't think Errol Spence is going to fight again. And I don't know what's going on with Jermell Charlo. I keep on hearing he's back, but we haven't seen it. But 154 has got Bakram, it's got Sergey Bohachuk, Madrimov, Virgil Ortiz. Xander Zayas is about to fight the guy who just beat Charles Conwell for a vacant title. So Xander Zayas is about to get a title shot. Erickson Lubin is around. Who is it? It's Jorge Garcia, Jorge Perez, who Xander Zayas is about to fight. And then, Jesus Ramos, who controversially lost a decision to Erickson Lubin in a fight that most thought Jesus Ramos should have won. That guy's a hammer. Like, I like Jesus Ramos. Shoot, I like Abel Ramos. But, I mean, damn. Like, so Sebastian Fundora could fight anyone. I question whether he can, like, fight more than another one fight at 154. I just don't know how that's humanly possible. But on the Tim Tszyu side, like, where do you go? I think he would have to convince himself that there's only one Sebastian Fundora. I mean, there's also a Bakram Murtazaliev, which is a whole nother story. But like, if you could convince yourself that it was just a matchup issue and this 6'5" guy with high volume was just too much of a mountain to scale, if you could convince yourself of that, then maybe there is a path forward. But with the chin, with now the wear and tear, I don't know what to say. Like, I think that Tim Tszyu's best days are done. And it I mean, in this case, it happened over the course of a couple fights. I mean, this one just kind of sealed the deal, but those first two fights kind of did it. I mean, that's boxing. And again, I'll harken back to, when we all say, hey, fight this guy, fight that guy. Every time these boxers enter the ring, they put their careers on the line. Yeah, they put their lives on the line, their health on the line and all that. But in what other job are we being asked? Like, imagine if you had to go to work one day, right? And like the laws and policies of your job change to where every time you go to work, if you underperform even a little bit, if you're off, if you have an off day, that might be your last day at work. And every time you went to work, that's what it was. That's what boxers deal with. So we talk about, fight this animal, fight that animal. These guys are risking their careers every time they do their job. Boots, Benji, Boots 154. Yeah, one of the elephants in the room. Boots Ennis is at 154. Thank you. I would love to see any one of these guys fight any one of these guys. I want to see Jermell Charlo, who he decides to fight, if he does in fact come back. Jay Foreman is in the house. Thank you for coming through. Let's see. Yeah, Lee Van said, I feel bad for Tim Tszyu. The cut ruined his career, and he looks shot mentally. Yeah, he looks shot mentally, and I don't think his chin is where it was. It is a little bit sad. It is pretty sad. It is boxing, but it is sad. Benji Tucker said, he definitely won, but the lack of defense made it. That was the Figueroa fight. My bad. Yeah, Tim Tszyu's not having good luck in these title fights. He was having good luck in these title fights, right? He was a champion with multiple title defenses. Then it all went left. Benji Tucker tweeted that Tim was not a Riyadh quality champion, sparring partner at best. You know what? Look, Turkey has taken over boxing. Can we just say it? I think every promoter would acknowledge it. He's pretty much taken over the sport. That's what money and, and effort will do. A lot of money and effort will do. But I don't like, the more he's injecting himself into the sport, the more I dislike it. He's got an ego like everyone. He likes being famous. He likes being seen. He likes being acknowledged. And I know that him and Tszyu had that little beef, right? Like Tszyu and Canelo were the first two to kind of push back at Turkey a little bit and say, no, I'm not going to just dance to your beat right now. And this is probably a byproduct of that, but that's some BS. When you say that Tim was not a Riyadh quality champion, like I can name a lot of Riyadh fighters that are not, better than Tszyu. So that's disrespectful, straight up, especially on the heels of that fight after this devastating quit between rounds that Tszyu has had to endure. That's pretty whack. Like that is low for Turkey to say that. I don't like that one bit. I like a lot of what he's done in boxing. I don't like when he shits on other fighters. That's weak. That's real weak. That's lame. That's a lot of things. And I could go more into it, but that's not cool at all. David Iser said, I kind of don't understand why Pacheco didn't stop McCumbee. I've been burnt on these 3 incidents. Well, we've seen Pacheco go the distance a couple times against guys where it's like, why don't you stop him? I think it's because Pacheco is kind of a front foot guy, but he's not a front foot assassin. He's not a relentless hunter. He's a boxer first. He's a boxer puncher who's a boxer first, looks for opportunities to land nice, clean shots, but he's not a guy who will press the issue if you make it difficult for him to press the issue. Like even prime Roy Jones got into a period of his career at light heavyweight, not at 168, but at light heavyweight, where if an opponent wanted to play it safe, wanted to back away, wanted to just pick their shots here and there, and aside from that, keep it cool, there was a path to making it the distance against Roy Jones Jr. Pacheco is not and for a few fights now hasn't appeared to me to be a you can run but you can't hide fighter. David Iser said Bohachuk just went the distance with Michael Fox. Yoenis Tellez couldn't knock out J. Rock Williams, and then this Pacheco not stopping McCumbee. I don't look at that as being a damning thing. Sometimes, I just don't think that is necessarily in Pacheco's DNA. Don't get me wrong; he will get his knockouts, he will get his stoppages. He stopped Sulechki, but there will be guys who, through fighting a more of a survivalist style fight, will go the distance against Pacheco. But yeah, that sucks that you bet that much and that was the outcome. And you were probably saying, oh my God, what's going on by the 4th round? Because again, it became clear to me that Pacheco wasn't going to push the issue to stop that guy, especially because he's a dangerous puncher too. So Pacheco had to be respectful of what would be coming back his way if he did press the issue. So there's a reason why he chose not to be a relentless hunter in some of these cases. Either the guy was counterpunching him effectively, like that one guy, I forgot his name, it was 3 fights ago. And then this guy, Trevor McCumbee, who dropped Caleb Plant. Yeah, he had to be a little bit careful. And McCumbee wasn't looking for a sustained engagement type of a fight. Antonio Maíz said, Tszyu could still fight Thurman if he's willing to go back to us. Is Keith Thurman still willing to fight Tszyu? I know it would be the nerve of Keith Thurman if he's not, but is he? The reward for beating Tszyu isn't the same today as it was a year ago. Ventru is in the house. Sup? Yeah, thank you for coming through. Great matches these past few weeks. Yeah, we've gotten some good ones. And now we're about to hit a little bit of a lull. There are some good fights that are coming up. Like Oscar Duarte versus Kenneth Sims doesn't have the allure and the star power of a lot of these ones that we're talking about. There is no Manny Pacquiao in that one, but there are some good fights. And, there's the Tank Davis, if depending on what happens legally, Tank Davis versus Lamont Roach rematch. A couple months down the line is, Canelo Crawford. And there's some good other ones peppered in, but we just got a bulk of the best action, I think, of the year. And then it really picks up. I think it's really going to pick up again September and beyond. I think the year is going to finish strong. But over the next 2 to 4 weeks, it's a little bit more mild. But I could be missing something too. But I think it kind of dies down a little bit. Yeah, Bam Rodriguez looked good, and he stopped Cafu. Bam Rodriguez, thank you for reminding me. Yeah, and I was gonna talk a little bit of Bam. Cafu is a kind of defensive first fighter, but he is a good fighter. Had a belt, and Bam earns another title. Bam is a top 10 pound for pound fighter. I think that they kind of injected Junto Nakatani because I've seen ring rankings where they have Junto over where they have Junto Nakatani over Bam Rodriguez. And I'm thinking how? Junto Nakatani has had some spectacular performances. He has picked up belts in multiple divisions now, but I see him ranked 6 pound for pound in some of these rankings. And I'm just how can you, he just doesn't deserve to be above, he's not a top 5 guy because I feel like that's already established. It's Usyk, Crawford, Inoue, Bivol, Beterbiev, because you can't drop Beterbiev to 8th because he lost a split decision to Bivol after beating Bivol by a close decision. So that's your 5 right there. Canelo probably in the back half of the top 10 somewhere. Bam Rodriguez, I wouldn't hate Bam at 6. Shakur's probably entered your top 10, should have, I think. But Junto Nakatani, if anything, 9, 10, something like that. If that, David Benavidez isn't in the top 10 because he's not in the top 2 of his division because he can't get a fight with either of those guys right now. Not to say that he beats any of those guys, but he couldn't get a fight with the best guy at 168 when a lot of people thought he was the best at 168. And now he can't get a fight against the best at 175 right now, at least, but he can't enter your top 10 because he's been stonewalled. But you could easily say that he might be a top 10 pound for pound talent, although the argument becomes tougher at 175 because you've got Bivol versus Beterbiev. But would you rank Junto Nakatani above Teofimo Lopez? Would you rank Junto Nakatani above Sebastian Fundora right now? Maybe, but I haven't seen him beat anybody good. He hasn't beaten good enough fighters, in my opinion, to be a top 6, 7 pound for pound guy. Bam Rodriguez has. Bam Rodriguez deserves, in my view, right now to be a top 6, 7, 8 pound for pound guy. Tank out of the top 10, it's his own fault. I look at Tank as being undoubtedly a top 10 pound for pound talent, but he's at 135 and he won't fight Shakur. How can you put him in I can't put him in the top 10. I would say he has top 10 pound for pound talent and top 10 pound for pound performances. When you see him enter the ring and what he does in that ring, every time he gets in there, aside from the Lamont Roach fight, we'll see what he does in the rematch. Decapitating Leo Santa Cruz. Yes, Santa Cruz wasn't in his best division and he was post prime, but Tank Davis's, win with pretty much one hand against Usyk Cruz, stopping Mario Barrios, right? Still the only guy to stop Mario Barrios, I think, right? Stopping Mario Barrios and other wins, knocking Frank Martin clean out. Tank Davis is he's a mother in there. He should be a top 10 fighter, but because of his fight by fight schedule, he's doing it to himself. And in my view, he's not a Hall of Famer. Now fame will sometimes get you into the Hall of Fame. Is Anthony Joshua, whole other conversation. I tend to think maybe Anthony Joshua before Tank. I think not that Anthony Joshua is more of a top 10 pound for pound talent, but wins over Joseph Parker, Alexander Povetkin, Vladimir Klitschko, Andy Ruiz, those wins will get you more of a Hall of Fame resume, being a multiple legit belt, 3-belt holder twice in his career, closer to the Hall of Fame than Tank Davis. Tank Davis, Hall of Fame talent, doesn't have a Hall of Fame resume in my view. Benji said that Barrios win means nothing to me anymore. But Tank went up to 140 to fight Barrios, who was the 140 guy, who went to 147 but was a 140 guy. But he not only beat Barrios, but he stopped Barrios. Barrios beat Ugas, went the distance against Keith Thurman. Damn, Barrios has fought some pretty good fighters when you really think about it. Who else has Barrios fought that was like pretty damn good? But you, that's just kind of funny that you said that you're not putting a lot of weight on Tank beating Barrios, but he stopped him. Ventru said, it might be promotional disputes or not. Tank has missed out on a few key fights. He should have, there's no reason Tank Davis shouldn't have fought Lomachenko. And no reason really at this point that if he gets past Lamont Roach, shouldn't fight Shakur Stevenson. Weight drain Ryan Garcia. Yeah. Weight drain Barrios. Arguments. Yeah. It's more of an argument can be made, I think, with the Ryan Garcia one, because that is, he did weight drain Ryan. Barrios had been fighting at 140. Like Barrios' last fight before fighting Tank, I think, was still at 140. He had recently fought Akhmedov, and I think he got the edge on that one. But yeah, Ventru, Teofimo, Haney, Loma, Shakur, Tank hasn't fought any of them. Crazy. And the thing is, Tank, from a financial standpoint, box office standpoint, has been in the driver's seat. If Tank wanted to make those fights could be made. Especially if Tank was willing to play some ball with Turkey. Which, like, why wouldn't you? Like, unless you're going to start getting paid less working with Turkey, or like do they sign their contracts with PBC in blood or something like that? Like, why should there be such a divide to where it's almost shunned upon to be able to work? Now, other PBC fighters have worked with Turkey, but why not work with Turkey right now? If it's not going to cost you money, why not work with Turkey? Turkey's doing a lot of things, but one of the things he's doing is he's making a lot of the fights that were impossible to make possible. Why not work with Turkey? Unless you don't want those fights. Unless you're just prideful and want to control the show. But I mean, what the hell at the end of the day? Ventru says, say what you want about Haney. At least he goes the mandatory route and doesn't duck, as far as I could tell. Yeah, good discipline. And look, if Haney fights Brian Norman, who, the story's still being told, we'll see. But if Tank fights Norman, who's not totally proven, but is looking dangerous, I would be every bit as impressed, damn near, as I was of Haney's first 140 fight being against Regis Prograis. At the time, dangerous fight. Prograis hadn't been dropped by Jack Catterall at that point. He had just had that weird, close, disputed decision win against Zorrilla. But I didn't make too much of that. I looked at Zorrilla's range as just kind of being like, okay, this was kind of tricky for Regis Prograis, but I didn't look at it as being, oh, Prograis done. I didn't look at it like that. Yeah, Benji, because Turkey likes 50-50 fights. Yeah. I love Floyd Mayweather Jr., one of my favorite fighters of all time. Like, some of my greatest and funnest and most beloved boxing memories are fight parties at the house, and having a bunch of people over for damn near every Floyd fight in the second half of his career. But he did, like a lot of other A-side fighters, Canelo kind of does it a lot too, slightly stacks the deck in their favor. Tank Davis does the same thing. I don't like that. But yeah, we're about to wrap this one up in a sec, y'all. I want to thank you guys one for coming in. Everybody who contributed to this pretty fun live chat after this very fun fight weekend. And I just want to make quick comments on a couple other fights. Yes, I thought Joet Gonzalez, I wanted Joet Gonzalez to get that decision over Figueroa, because Joet Gonzalez really just can't catch a break in most of these cases. Gary Russell Jr. looked pretty good, looked better than I thought he would look, but you started seeing him get beaten along the ropes, especially to the body. You started seeing Gary Russell Jr. slow down, but you also saw Gary Russell Jr. get that stoppage in the 10th and final round, in the final minute of the final round against Hugo Castaneda. Gary Russell Jr. at lightweight, I don't know, man. I don't know. I'm not sold on it. He used to be one of my favorite fighters, just blazing hand speed, the fastest puncher in his era. You know, outside of Manny Pacquiao, Gary Russell, to me, including Manny Pacquiao, really had the fastest hands, some of the fastest hands I've ever seen. And the way that he beat Johnny Gonzalez was ridiculous. His career is so disappointing, though, because he didn't get the fights with Leo Santa Cruz, Carl Frampton, even Josh Warrington. He got the fight with Lomachenko, got the fight with Johnny Gonzalez, but after that, it was just mandatory after mandatory. His title run looked a little bit like Deontay Wilder's title run, minus the fights against Luis Ortiz Jr. Because who were, Gary Russell Jr.'s best defenses against? Jojo Diaz, who was undefeated at the time. That's one of Gary Russell Jr.'s best wins. King Tug Nyambiar, and then Gary Russell got injured against Max Sio, lost that. I thought he was retired. I never thought we would see him back in the ring. So I was happy to see him, but I don't expect him to return to the ring again anytime soon, because as it was, even back in the day, Gary Russell was giving you maybe one fight a year. So I would be shocked if we see Gary Russell Jr. back in the ring in 6 months. But I would be curious to see it too. And I would be curious to see who he wants to fight at lightweight. Pitbull said, you said Pitbull's a cartoon character. What you mean? His style? Pitbull, man, I wanted to see that rematch against Fierro. Fierro pulled out due to weight cut issues. Yeah, Wilder. We love you, Wilder. Yeah, we really do too. Pitbull ended up fighting a late replacement and just kind of beat him up over the course of the fight. Nothing really, spoke to me about that fight. The guy was tough for hanging in there. I don't like Pitbull at 140. Never did. He was a small lightweight. He goes up and fights. Who did he first fight at 140? Rolly Romero, who at the time was a 135 guy who had just moved to 140. Pitbull beat him. Good win for Pitbull. Stop Rolly Romero. And then Pitbull, fights Valenzuela, loses to him. He has like a 50-50, could go either way, damn near fight against Angel Fierro. I don't like Pitbull at 140. His punch isn't as dangerous as it was at lightweight, and he's 5'4". Like, go back to 135 if you can make the weight, man. Go back to where you're dangerous. Like, I don't see Pitbull beating even Jack Catterall. I don't see Pitbull beating Arnold Barboza. I don't see Pitbull beating Teofimo Lopez. Like, nah. Yeah, Ventru, I agree. Pitbull should go to lightweight. EK's in the house. Oh, really? I don't know why my vids wouldn't be popping up in the timeline. So I usually do like at least 2 previews a week. And then I'll do the post-fight video. I haven't been doing as many live chats. Maybe that's the thing. I haven't been doing as many. I'm trying to do more. But yeah, I would love to see, some of my video thumbnails popping back into your timeline more frequently than they were before. But yeah, I try to do at least 2 previews a week. In this case, I think I did like 3 or 4 because there were just a lot of, big fights this weekend. So sometimes I'll do 3. In rare cases, I'll do 1 if it's not like a good fight weekend. But I'll usually do the preview or the recap, the reaction, if you will, after that. But yeah, thank you for coming through. And I want to thank everyone for coming through in this live chat. Ventru, EK, Benji, Lee Van. I saw Jay Former was in the house. Heck yeah. David Eister, Antonio Mais, Sector MMA, Alex Alberto G. We had Wilder in the house. Edward Espinosa, Maverick 77 Defender. Oh, no. I'm tripping. I thought it said Wilder as the person's name saying done, but it was somebody named number 23 saying Wilder done. That was I totally misinterpreted that. Yeah, Wilder might be done. He didn't look great even in his comeback fight, but it was an interesting comeback. If he's going to stick with it, I'd like to see him come back in another couple of months and see how he looks. Ken Cunningham, thank you for coming through. Charles Stinger, thank you for coming through. Heck yeah. Stan Tucker. And hi, Mom. Yeah, my dad and mom are watching. Heck yeah. Benji, Brandy, Brexley, love you guys. Heck yeah. Thank y'all for coming through. Until next time. And I'm gonna try to do a midweek chat if I could get to it, but I'm at least gonna do a fight preview. I think it's Oscar Duarte versus Kenneth Sims Jr. week. I'll try to get busy on that one. But yeah, thank you guys once again for coming through. I'm Woog.